rearranging and I'm excited to have this conversation today. So, okay, I think maybe we'll get started. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining this session today. My name is Kenzie McRae. I work for the Federation of Calgary Communities. If you've heard of the Federation of Calgary Communities, maybe react in some way. But we're a nonprofit organization that supports lots of smaller organizations throughout our city. Oh, yeah, look at that, love. Yeah, I'll get into what we do, but I work specifically for one of our programs called the Good Places Project, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we do, how we support folks, and I want to talk about the power of a pilot today and what I mean by that. Um, I do want to start by acknowledging that we're gathered here on Mohkinstsis in the city of Calgary. So this is Treaty 7 territory, home to many people, including the Siksika, Piikani, and Kainai First Nations, Tsuut'ina First Nations, and those of the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, as well as Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. My work revolves around place and how we care for and steward place, as well as how we envision the future and try and make our homes even better. So placemaking is so rooted and tied um, to Indigenous people. So I really encourage if you are interested in learning a little bit more, I've added this QR code at the bottom right corner here, and it links to an article that describes two different terms. One is placemaking and one is place keeping. And it talks about really the relationship between the ideas of preserving and caring for our homes as well as envisioning that future and how they tie really well together. So really encourage taking a look at that article if you are interested. Today, I am really briefly going to talk about the Federation of Calgary Communities and our program Good Places specifically. And then I'm going to talk about this term I've mentioned a couple times here, placemaking. You might have heard of it. It's kind of a buzzword right now. I'll share a little bit about how we interpret that at the Federation and really how that can be shifted to think about community building as a whole. And then we're going to go through a little bit of Menti activities, some word clouds, and if there's time, I want to chat a little bit more about where we can find community supports. And please stop me at any point if you have questions. Feel free to unmute, jump in. This can be very conversational, or leave a message in the chat. And I'll try and monitor the chat, but also if there's questions in the chat that I haven't addressed, maybe Jen, if you could poke me, that would be awesome. So, Federation of Calgary Communities, we are community capacity builders. So, like I said, we are a nonprofit organization in the city. We support other nonprofit organizations, mostly community associations, but we also support about 90 other organizations in our city that cover things like senior social groups, animal support, family support. So we cover a large range. What we do at the Federation is we're educators. We provide lots of workshops about nonprofit governance, how to be a good nonprofit, essentially. We have an audit program. We offer one-on-one support. And then also we have quite a few different grants that we run through the Federation. I wanted to highlight 3 grants that are available to community members who are passionate. So you don't have to be necessarily with an organization that is a member of the Federation, because the Federation is a membership organization. But these 3 grants are open to other organizations that might be interested. So Activate YYC is a small tactical urbanism grant that focuses on projects related to roads or sidewalks and how we can do small scale interventions to make these spaces more vibrant, more safe. So often, if you've seen like murals or painting on a road that is a way to slow traffic or highlight that maybe it's a pedestrian area or a slow street or a place where a school bus stops. That's the kind of project that Activate YYC can support. And then good places, I'll chat more in depth in the next slide. And Climate Ready YYC is a grant that focuses on how communities can build climate resilience. So often community gardens or workshops that educate people on how to grow food in our changing climate, or shade structures sometimes. Those are all kinds of projects that Climate Ready YYC can support. So if any of those grants sound interesting and you want to learn more, all of that information is on the Federation of Calgary Communities website, and you can also reach out to me and we can chat more in depth if you have an idea that you'd like to run past us. Good Places is a program with the Federation of Calgary Communities. So it is in one part a grant, and we offer about $400,000 per year to placemaking projects that are led by communities. And I'll chat more about what placemaking means, but so we have the money, the funding, but then we're also a capacity building program. So we run free workshops to anyone in the city that is interested in building community, in trying to improve public spaces in their own communities. And these workshops also support with like building grant writing skills. So we talk about how to build a budget, how to plan a project, and also just trying to understand how to navigate city process. So what are some types of permits or permissions that you might need for different types of projects? So we have these workshops, we have resources, and we also offer lots of one-on-one support. So if you're ever thinking, hey, I want to lead a project in my community and I have no idea where to start, you could always reach out to us and we're really happy to try and have a conversation with you, understand your idea, and maybe try and point you in the right direction for next steps. So, placemaking, I've used this word many times. Really, placemaking is a type of community building or community development. And the idea is that it's a process that's led by communities where we are shaping our public spaces together. And so ideally, we're trying to make our public spaces more accessible, more welcoming, more vibrant, more fun. Placemaking can look like lots of different types of physical, tangible projects. So adding seating, adding picnic tables, adding shade structures, or adding landscaping to an area. Adding a mural to a community that shares the stories of that community. So this picture on the bottom right here, Ramsey community, the icons that are included in this mural are actually they're highlighting community stories, and the community was able to paint this mural together. That's placemaking. Placemaking is also community gardens, growing food together. It can be sharing a message board that the community can use to communicate with one another, and also highlighting a little bit of wayfinding. So this Renfrew Community Association sign makes it very clear to people that you are in Renfrew. This fun, playful Bonavista Downs wayfinding. So this is signage that is highlighting existing community amenities and really celebrates what this community has to offer. So these are all examples of placemaking. It's also a lot about fun. So a mobile skate park can be placemaking. If you removed this mobile skate park, you would be left with a concrete pad. So the addition of this play feature that people can use at any time for free, that's placemaking. This Acadia example is Croca-Curl. So if you've seen Crokinole, the game where you like flick the little stone, this is a large scale version it's curling mixed with Croca-Curl. And so placemaking can also be trying to explore how we can make our city more fun in the winter for free. That's a big thing that we're really wanting to support with Good Places Project. Besides the physical, tangible elements that you might add to a space to make it more fun, more vibrant, more accessible to use, placemaking might also look like having recurring events to bring life to a space. Again, if you removed this kind of farmer's market that we see in this Hillhurst Sunnyside picture, you're left with a parking lot, right? Or you're left with a concrete pad. So sometimes we have these spaces that are already well suited for certain activities. Maybe we are programming that space on a recurring basis to ensure that the community is using that community space on a recurring basis, and there's opportunity to make connections and feel a sense of belonging within that place. That's placemaking. Or examining how you can creatively use an existing space in a different way. So, having free yoga classes by the lake that anyone can just drop in and join. We consider that placemaking. Or, yeah, trying new fun ideas like having a little outdoor theater in a park. That could be placemaking. Thinking about how we can reuse that park space in a different way that might bring new energy to that space. That's placemaking. Placemaking can be really big projects. It can be led by the city. It can be led by developers or large companies. River Hall is an example I love. It's a wonderful place down by the river in near Eau Claire in Calgary. And this is a space that is so vibrant and lovely when it's open. It's a place where you can come down and meet friends for free. You don't have to pay anything to spend time there, but they've added the seating. They've added, fire pits. They've added lighting to make it really a nice atmosphere. And they have an option to buy food, to buy drinks. So all of this has really created a sense of place. And this was a parking lot, I believe, before it became River Hall. So again, it was kind of an empty space that wasn't really used by people on a human scale. And this is what it can look like when you have all of these amenities. Placemaking can also be really small. And this is the thing I really want to focus on today because this is achievable by anyone. Anyone can do this kind of project. And I love this example. I don't know if Lynn is here today, but Lynn from Shawnee Evergreen, but placemaking could look like adding a few mobile chairs and a little library and creating a little bit of a nook where people can have a seat, rifle through the library, have a conversation with a neighbor. That's placemaking. Any questions so far? All right. I'm going to keep going, but please feel free to jump in if you have any questions at all. So, to expand on this example here for the chairs and this little library, I want to highlight again what the power of a pilot really can be. So, I mean, trying a new idea. When I say pilot, I mean trying something small and achievable and seeing where things can grow from that small idea. So this Shawnee Evergreen Community Association example is one I love because they really had a sense. I see Anya reacted. Hi, Anya. Yeah, they really wanted to try to do something in their community that would offer people a chance to connect and to gather. This is a community association that does not have a building. So they work out of the parks throughout their community. And it can be, I don't know about your own neighborhoods, but some of the parks in the communities where I grew up are very much just kind of empty grass and people walk their dogs through them, and that's about it. They wanted to really spark a conversation about what the community association is, and they wanted to show the neighborhood that they're trying really hard to make their community more vibrant and more connected. And they wanted to try something that would be easy to achieve pretty quickly so that they could see an impact and see results right away. So what they did is in 2023, they applied to an Activate YYC grant. So that was one of the grants that the Federation has. And they applied for $1,000 to purchase, I want to say it was about 60 plastic chairs, and there was also a bit of donation involved with Home Depot. So $1,000 for supporting this project, but they ended up getting these chairs from Home Depot, and then they stenciled on a message that highlighted that this was the Shawnee Evergreen Community Association that had run this project, and they put the chairs out through their community in their park spaces, along pathways. And they had neighbors that were living within sightline of the areas where these chairs were placed. These neighbors sort of just watched to see how these chairs moved, how they were used. And this really allowed for flexibility so people could just move these chairs to gather. And so they noticed that if they had placed the chairs at one end of the park one day, maybe the next day they found 10 of these chairs were placed in a circle at the other end. And it was very clear that 10 people had gathered to spend time outside together for free, to have conversations. That was such an impactful example of how such a small idea, just adding some Adirondack chairs into your community, can really create something where people are able to meet up and to spend time with each other. I think the cost of gathering is really increasing, and so it's really impactful to offer these amenities where people can spend time together without having to host, without having to meet up in a place where maybe it's cost prohibitive. So they set out these chairs. The neighborhood really loved them. And when they were taking them away in the fall to winterize the chairs, people were apparently really begging them to leave the chairs out because they loved the chairs so much. So through this 2023 project, they recorded these anecdotes. They had great storytelling. They had photos to share. Fast forward, and it's 2026. They applied for a Good Places grant. So one of our placemaking grants, they applied for $14,000 to purchase new, higher quality chairs because over the years, the chairs, they weren't the highest quality. So they were not in great shape, or maybe some had gone missing. So they needed to replace chairs, and they wanted some nicer chairs. And they had a really easy case of showing how this small $1,000 idea really had been a success, and they had the stories and they had the data to support their application for a Good Places grant. So it was really easy to communicate the value of this project, and they were able to secure this Good Places grant to purchase new chairs, which they're using this year. Yes, Anya says the chairs have been so amazing. People use them all the time. Um, yeah, thank you for sharing this. They often are moved under trees. Yeah, I think that's another great example. If you were to skip a step, and if you wanted to add seating to a place that didn't have seating, and you decided to put a bench, for example, like a permanent bench, how would you know if that's actually a place where people want to sit? But if you put out chairs that are movable, people are able to move the chair to exactly where they would want to be sitting. And they're also able to set up and arrange themselves in a way that makes sense for the group that they're with. So if you were to put a bench in the park, maybe two people can sit together. But if you put the chairs in a park, 10 people can gather in a circle. I think that's really powerful. And so that's why we really support the idea of these more non-permanent amenities as a test, because now you have that information to say like, hey, we know that this particular area in this park is exactly where people really want to be sitting because we've seen how the chairs have moved and spent time in this area. So yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. Another example, Bridgeland Riverside Community Association. So this was another Activate YYC project back in 2018. Uh, this main street, I don't know if you've been to Bridgeland recently, but you might have noticed some of the sidewalks are kind of bumping out and being extended so that the area where a pedestrian is crossing is shorter, and there's more visibility for pedestrians because this main street back in 2018 was a place where there'd be cars driving through pretty quickly, and then there'd be cars parked along the road, and there was really poor visibility for pedestrians, and it was really unsafe for people trying to cross the street and people that lived in the community. So a group of volunteers involved with the community association in Bridgeland Riverside wanted to create a little bit of a um, a mural because the city had added these kind of, what's the word? Not pylons, but like these these stick things in this picture, um, to kind of bump out that curb temporarily before changing the actual physical infrastructure of the crosswalk. But it was not super easy for cars to see. It didn't really draw attention to the fact that the road was narrowing and there had been a change to that street. So 30 community volunteers got together and they did a paint the pavement project. So they added these painted dots in the area that was no longer where cars could drive, but was now sort of an extension of the sidewalk. And this was to really highlight that this was kind of a new infrastructure that was coming that was trying to slow speed and draw attention to where pedestrians would be crossing the road. This was a precedent in Calgary. It was the first of its kind in 2018, so it did take quite a lot of work for the volunteers working in collaboration with the city of Calgary to figure out how to navigate this new process. But it's a pretty simple idea, right? Like we're just painting, and paint lasts like 2 to 3 years usually. I actually could still see a little bit of faint dots. I was out there last week and you can still kind of see it, but it's mostly gone now. So it lasted a little bit longer, but it's not a permanent change. It's something that residents can lead. It was in partnership with the city, but it's completely led by just residents, people who live in the community, and it was done in like a weekend, right? Um, so today, the infrastructure has totally changed. Where those dots were painted has is now like an extension of the sidewalk. But this led a great example for other communities in the city. So Activate YYC has funded lots of other similar projects since that Bridgeland Riverside project in 2018. So Southview community has a similar sort of bump out painting. And then Milliken Ogden added these um, curb bump outs as well and painted on them. So this led the example for community-led projects that are supporting trying to make our streets safer for pedestrians. Through traffic calming measures. Any questions about this one? No. Okay. Again, it's a simple idea, and before trying to maybe petition like these larger scale changes that need to be done by the city that are expensive and take a long time, this can be a first step, like a project to try in your community, and you could get data from this, right? You could just get like a speed gun and try and DIY some research. How fast are people driving through this area before? And then once you add this painting and this mural, how fast are people driving after? That would be a really easy way to kind of um, further advocate for change in your community. But it starts with such a small idea that is really achievable. What if you want to program your community and you don't want to add any physical amenities? What does a pilot look like? So this is an example from Reading, Pennsylvania, that I really like. This is a city that over 30% of the residents live below the poverty line. There's a lot of um, aging infrastructure. Uh, this organization, Barrio Alegria, is an arts nonprofit that really wanted to celebrate the community and bring some vibrancy to spaces that weren't really getting any love. So they wanted to create something called the alleyway concerts, where they were regularly programming small arts and music performances in spaces that are public, that are free for people to be spending time in. Um, so they worked with artists from those communities to co-create programming, and they just kept showing up. So they used portable speakers. They didn't get any fancy equipment. It was a really small idea that, and they just needed to show up time and time again, because for the first 6 months, residents did not believe that even though they said there would be a concert in the alleyway, they didn't believe that Barrio Alegria would actually show up. So it took 6 months for people to even believe that a musician would be in that space when they said they would. And it took a year and a half for real trust to develop between the neighbors and then the organization Barrio Alegria. It took that time because there had been so many failed promises before, where residents didn't really believe that if a program was supposed to be happening, that it would actually happen. So they had this simple idea. They did not invest in like new infrastructure. The idea wasn't we're going to have this huge music festival. It wasn't too ambitious. It was just that we are going to show up frequently, and we're going to show up when we say we are going to show up. And we're just going to have one musician bring their portable speaker, and they're, just going to be in this alleyway. We're not purchasing any new like equipment at all. But we're going to do it time and time again to build that trust. So to me, that's kind of what a pilot could look like for programming or for events. We're starting with what we already have. We're leaning on our own community, and we're just showing up time and time again to see how this idea can really build that trust with the community. And then maybe after that, maybe Barrio Alegria would want to expand their programming. Maybe they would want to dream big and get their own space and start hosting shows in a building. But before that, they were doing alleyway concerts. All right. Any questions at all about, again, what is placemaking and the scale and these pilot projects? And if not, if
Not
you,
a
oh, go ahead.
question.
Kenzie,
Hi.
no, not a question. It's just wanted to say thank you because you show examples of how small things started, and
Mhm,
I love the part where you mentioned you can start small, gather data, build a
mhm,
case, and move from like $1,000 project, and if a few years down the road you can raise like 14,000.
mhm,
And it doesn't have to be a permanent because most of the time you want something permanent. But
mhm.
seeing at the flow marking that it was beautiful, even though it didn't last too long. But very visual, great presentation. I enjoyed it.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kenzie, same, not a question, but I like the intentionality that community members or communities have to place making. Like it is intentionally like embedded, like they want to create a space for community members to connect, to engage. And so they do little things, looking at Shawnee Evergreen, looking at Bridgeland, Acadia, I believe you shared.
Hmm.
Yeah, those are very, very beautiful ways to, it kind of gives people an idea that, oh, you don't have to start big. It could just be small. It could
Yeah,
just be you starting as simple as a book club with old books and coming together and saying, let's meet at this point and then engage in that
absolutely.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and what I really love about all of these examples is they are led by community members. And that's the type of like, yes, placemaking can come from larger institutions, but the type of community building that we really support and want to empower through the Good Places project is grassroots, community led, like led by the community for the community. And so that's the big takeaway that I really hope that we can all leave here with this morning is that we as residents and as members of our own communities have this really um, awesome potential in the city of Calgary to have impact in the places where we live. That's really special. That's a really special thing in Calgary that is kind of unique to this city. So we have that power to try these small, non-permanent ideas. And we're here to support you if you have ideas to do that. And I would really encourage you to look at what you can do without purchasing new things. And I would say try and look at what your community already has to offer and how you can test these ideas as cheap and cheerful as possible to kind of get that story started and to get those anecdotes just to see how people respond to these ideas. Yeah. Lindsay, do you feel comfortable to unmute and maybe share your question? Are there examples of nonprofit families using this grant for a community space? Do you mean like nonprofits that support housing?
So we're a nonprofit that supports families with future planning for adults with disabilities. So we build networks within networks. And so we have families with large networks. We all come together for different kind of events and activities and such. But I'm just kind of thinking of like an example of perhaps like a nonprofit where all the families got together and selected like a community space project to do together
Mm.
with this grant.
Potentially, yeah. So for us, the biggest requirement is that whatever we're funding has to be accessible and freely available to anyone in the public at any time. So often projects that are in totally open spaces like City of Calgary parks or often community associations are sitting on park space and so things that are happening outside if a group of families wanted to plan for a community space like adding accessible picnic benches for example or like picnic tables in an area and then having maybe some kind of information about like why there's this kind of community space that's been created and anyone can use that space, but it was led by a group of families that would probably align. If it is in a space that is more niche or maybe only available to members of a group or those families, that would not be eligible. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks very much.
Cool. Yeah, we can reach out to me and we can chat more for sure. If you have like, if you're envisioning a type of space, um, we can chat more about that for sure. I think I have until 11:15, I believe. So if folks are willing to spend 10 minutes here. I have a couple of Menti questions. I just wanted to lead us through a little bit of a visioning exercise to start maybe thinking about what we might do in our own communities. So, if you join Menti, let me know if that QR code works for you all.
I had the code work. It just says waiting for presenter.
Okay, perfect. We'll go to the first question. Just a warm-up question here, and I'll maybe just like 15 seconds. If we think about the spaces that we spend our time in, like public spaces, what makes a place good to us? People, safety, yeah, inclusive, absolutely. Yep. Mm-hmm. Welcoming, yeah. What makes a place feel welcoming? Like what, if you were to walk into a space, what would make it feel welcoming? Fun, colorful, yeah. Accessible is huge. Light, absolutely. Adding string lights to a place is such a simple way um, to really add that warmth and vibrancy and beauty in a very non-permanent way. And that's an example of like such a simple thing that you can do that can just add so much to a space. And it makes it really clear that people are encouraged to spend time in that space. Yeah, awesome. Snacks, yes. Yeah. Flowers, yes, absolutely. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. So now, if we're thinking about community, obviously community can mean so many different things. That could be cultural community, it could be um, like your physical community. Um, if we're thinking about our actual like geographic communities where we live, so our neighborhoods, and you think about your own community, what would make your community even better? What would your long-term like goal be for your community? Yeah, intentional connection. I love that. Pride. Yep. Inclusive. Yep. A garden. Improved communication. Yeah. For me, I think I would love to see more people walking frequently in my community. I think I love when I go outside of my home and there's just people around. It makes me feel safe and then there's higher chance of like spontaneous running into people that I see frequently or maybe become um, neighbor connect like neighbor connections. So yeah, I love that. Okay, so if we hold on to our own goals into the rest of these questions, let's keep the goal in mind. What is a small idea? Maybe try to think of something that would be related to placemaking. So either adding something to your community or trying out some kind of club or program or something. What's a small idea that you could try out in your own community that might help you work towards that goal? So for me, my goal is to see more people walking around my community. I think I would try and add some wayfinding, so maybe some fun signage that's not very permanent. Like maybe I could paint on rocks and have like small little walking routes throughout my community, like little place markers that you could try and find along your walk throughout the community to sort of make it into a bit of a game and to encourage people to get outside and to think about walking in the community. And another small idea is I could lead a Jane's Walk. So a Jane's Walk is like that free walking festival that happens in May. I could lead a Jane's Walk in my community to show people a nice route to walk throughout my community. I love this. So exchange contact info, creative workshops, create a club. Yeah, could you be even more specific? What kind of club could you create? What would be interesting to you? Stick library at a dog park. I love stick libraries. They're so like whimsical and fun and playful. A porta potty, yeah, that would definitely make it more accessible for people in the community. Access to free washrooms is so important. Gorilla seed planting, very cool. Painted rock garden. I love a painted rock garden. I think it's such a great way to do something small, cheap and cheerful, that can add so much playfulness to a community. Yeah, a water fountain is a big endeavor, but it's so important. So important. Walking group. Yeah, walking group is such a great way to connect with neighbors, totally for free. And it's just like that alleyway concert idea where the most important thing is showing up on that recurring basis and building that trust, building that community. Um, and you can do it. You can totally do it. Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing. So, if we're thinking about this idea that we all have for our own community, sometimes you test an idea. It's really hard to know if an idea will work in your community because every community is different. So even if you see a great idea and you're inspired and you want to try it in your own community, it can be so hard to know how people will respond in your community. So sometimes projects might or ideas might be successful and sometimes they might not feel like a huge success. Maybe people don't come. Maybe you're leading a walking group and people aren't showing up time and time again. My question would be, regardless of whether you think your project was a success or a failure, what could you learn just from trying out the idea? What positives could you take away from piloting an idea? Yeah, you could learn about the capacity of people within your community. Maybe you have this idea, and as you're trying to have conversations with people in your community to find that community support, maybe people are just telling you, like, hey, we don't have time. Like we're working multiple jobs. We have kids we need to take care of. Like childcare is a challenge. You might learn about the capacity of people within your community. And through that, you might identify new needs and maybe you'll take away a new goal, right? Like you learn more about what people really care about within your community. Who's in your community? Yeah, don't give up. Community values, absolutely. Interests, who has similar interests? Yeah, what times work for people? Totally. Another thing I would say is um, through trying out projects, you also build personal capacity. Like you learn things about yourself, you build skills in organizing, in sometimes in learning how to work with the city, learning how certain permits work, like learning how to work with nonprofit organizations, learning how to collaborate, learning how to engage with your community. You might build connections with people in your community just through trying out an idea. So, what I would suggest is if you are ever looking to apply for a grant for any kind of project, impact is always a question that comes up. Like, what is the impact of this idea, of this project? And I would say, look at, yes, the impact to the larger community and what you are putting out, but also another really valuable thing is the skills that community leaders are building. Those skills overall build capacity in your own community, and that's super valuable. So that's another thing you can chat about if you're applying for a grant is how it's impacting the community, but also how it's impacting volunteers. Wonderful. Okay. And so if you have this idea, you have a goal, where could you find support? Like if you have an idea, where do you look next? I would say definitely you can always reach out to, yes, your community, your neighbors, your friends. Yeah, Facebook. Yeah, that's a really good idea. You can totally reach out to me, I would say. Even if it's not a placemaking grant, if you have an idea for building community, and I love to chat about it. So reach out anytime, and I might know supports or people to connect you to. 311 for permits, absolutely, yeah. If you are um, leading something where you're adding something to a public space, you're going to need a permit, so you'll need to chat with 311 for sure. You can also ask us. We might have um, knowledge around that as well. Your community association is such a great organization to connect with. Absolutely. Local nonprofits as well. Yeah, these are organizations that have knowledge and experience leading projects in communities. So they're a great place to start. And they can also be organizations that can be your champions. So if you have an idea, often they maybe don't have the capacity to lead a project, but they can support you as you lead a project. A lot of projects that we fund at the Federation are passion projects led by a resident who might not be involved daily with their community association, but they want to lead this specific project. So they'll approach their community association and say, I'm really passionate. I want a food pantry in my community. I'm going to lead this and I'm going to find funding for it. I'm going to apply for a grant, but I need you, the organization, to be my champion. And so that's often how projects that we support come to life. Awesome. Yeah. So I would say please reach out. Uh, anytime you have ideas or questions, we're a great place to start. The Federation, I'm a capacity builder, that's my role. So always happy to chat about your ideas and see how um, we can scale them to fit your capacity and your community's capacity. Um, yeah, perfect. So these are some of the responses. I should have been skipping ahead, but the last thing I would really love to leave you with um, for the rest of your day, if you were to think about, like, if you had an idea in your own community, uh, um, and it didn't matter whether you succeeded or you failed, and you didn't have to worry about resources like money, or time, and you had the support that you needed to bring this idea to life, just to try it out, to test it out, what would that idea be? Like, what would you love to just try in your community? Um, think about that. And if you have an idea that you'd love to try, yeah, please reach out. Thank you so much for this conversation. I had such a wonderful time. Awesome. Yeah. I think my contact info will be sent out to people. So that's that. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Kenzie. It's great. I always love hearing about the projects that are happening and have happened and all kinds of things. I feel like a lot of us get stuck in that cycle where we just keep making plans bigger, and not everything has to be huge. Sometimes the little things are what make a difference.
Mhm.
There's a local walking group in the community just south of where I live. And I love seeing the posts when they're like, oh, we're getting ready to go. Like, we've got 3 new members this week. And it's very like low key. And it all started with one person who joined the community and wanted to make friends during COVID. Well, how did you make friends during COVID? You had to stay away from each other. So it was a really
Mhm.
great thing to do.
Mhm.
I am also not a super zoomy person, so I'm not entirely sure how we get out of the break room and back into the regular room. Um, so hopefully that'll just happen on its own. Hey, that was great. I have the power to control technology. Okay. So we will return into the main session, and if anybody needs to take a break, they can go to the washroom, refill your water, your coffee, your tea, whatever it is, and we will see you back in the main room in a few minutes.
Cool. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.